Okay, I think we'll get started. It's 5 o'clock and I see that we are live streaming on YouTube as well now. Thanks, Mackenzie. Craig, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi there. We also have Rob Mills in the attendee area from Blythewood Homes. Did you want us to bring him in at this?
I'm handling everything tonight. They're
Okay.
they're just watching from the office. Yeah.
Great. So welcome everyone to this information open house. Thanks to those of you that have joined via Zoom, and hello to everyone watching on YouTube. So this is an open house for a proposed plan of subdivision and a related zoning bylaw amendment that the town has received. I'm Aaron Butler. I'm the manager of development approvals in the Planning and Development Services Department. With me tonight, we have Mackenzie Cece, who's the planning technician. Mackenzie will be kind of organizing all of us as attendees come in and out of the Zoom meeting through the public portion of the meeting. And Craig Rowe, who's a planner with Upper Canada Consultants and is the agent on this file. So as I said, the town has received an application, and I'll just start my slideshow here. At the property known as 3285 Thunder Bay Road. And the application's for a plan of subdivision for 41 single family homes. So this open house is really the first step of the public consultation process. Tonight's meeting is kind of the first opportunity to share information with members of the public that are interested, and for town staff and the agent and the proponent to hear feedback from the public. There will be a future public meeting, a formal public meeting held in front of council. That's anticipated to take place on October 4th. And if you've received notice of this meeting, you'll receive notice of that meeting as well by mail. And the input we receive tonight will be contained within a staff report that goes to council on October 4th. We'll kind of have a summary of the public comments. Staff will speak to them. The owner will have an opportunity to address comments received from the public at that meeting. And you are again welcome to join the meeting on October 4th to provide your input as well. So tonight, just the way this is going to go, I have a really brief presentation just to provide an overview of the application from the town's perspective. I'll then hand it over to Craig. Craig will be providing a presentation, and then I have received some public comments to date. I'll kind of summarize those and speak to them just briefly before Mackenzie kind of takes over and brings members of the public in and out, and Mackenzie will give instructions on how you can participate when the time comes. Okay, so just the site location map here, 3285 Thunder Bay Road. It's located at the southeast corner of Burley Road South and Thunder Bay Road, and it does have waterfront access. The town's official plan, which is kind of our high-level planning document, designates the property, the majority of the property is low-density residential, and then the lands along the water, my apologies, as environmental protection. A portion of the property that you can see there in yellow is also designated environmental conservation overlay as well. And within that area, development is permitted subject to an environmental impact study that would have to be reviewed by the town and other review agencies like the Niagara Region and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. The area that's identified in that green is, of course, the waterfront area. It's a hazard area prone to erosion and flooding from the lake. And as part of this proposal, those lands in green, as well as a portion of the lands in yellow, would be dedicated to the town as a town environmental protection area and parkland area. This map just shows that there is this existing water course that runs through the site. which is regulated also by the Conservation Authority. And through this proposal, that water course is proposed to stay, and a buffer from that water course would be provided. And this would also be dedicated to the dam. We'll get into, I think Craig will get into some of those details. This shows the existing zoning of the property. So the existing zoning is waterfront residential with an environmental conservation overlay. And again, the lands along the lake are zoned hazard. Sorry, it keeps skipping ahead on me through my slideshow. The proposal here is to, part of this application is to rezone from waterfront residential to a residential 2A zone. And again, Craig will get into some of those details and kind of show you what the plan of subdivision looks like, what it's being proposed to look like. So I'll stop my screen sharing, and Craig, you can get into your presentation.
Thanks, Aaron. Let me just cue this up. Full screen view there. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, good evening, everybody that's tuning in. My name is Craig Rowe. I'm a senior land use planner with Upper Canada Consultants. We're a planning and engineering firm that's based in St. Catharines. And I'm the agent that's representing Westwind Niagara Developments Incorporated on this file. So what I've prepared tonight is a bit of a brief presentation to give you more of a casual, in-depth overview of what the applications entail, a little bit about the property, and kind of what next steps are coming out of the planning process, so everyone gets a good understanding of how things are going to go. Once this is done, as you heard from town staff, there's going to be an open session for some questions and answers. I'll do my best to answer whatever questions I can tonight, but if there's anything that requires some follow-up or additional information, we can of course provide that to you at a later time. So what's been proposed are two applications from our clients, one for a draft plan of subdivision and one for a zoning bylaw amendment. So in terms of the draft plan of subdivision, there's 41 lots that are proposed for single detached homes. Of this development, there's also 170 or 1.75 hectares of land that's going to be dedicated to the town of Fort Erie. And that's largely on the southern portion of the property, and includes the water course that Aaron spoke about, the hazard shoreline, and a couple blocks for municipal parkland. In terms of the zoning change, it is zoned waterfront residential with the EC overlay. And our proposal for the concurrent zoning bylaw amendment will be to put an R2A zoning in effect, which will also permit the single detached dwellings. And then we're also applying the necessary open space and environmental protection zones to those blocks of land in the subdivision that I'll get into and show you in a minute here, just to ensure that they're protected from development for the long term. So this is the overall property right here, a bit of a zoom in. So in total, it's 5.66 hectares in area, or just about 14 acres. The property is generally flat up in this area here, and then it, of course, dives down a little bit as it gets towards the water. There's an existing detached home on the property and an accessory structure. Through these applications, there's no plan to demolish them. They're being kept. And that's based on conversations with the town, and I'm sure Aaron will be addressing that later. There have been a couple comments about this nature. The property also does have some frontage along Burley Road South over at this side, which is where one of the roadway accesses are going to come in. But overall, with the exception of the little bit of Lake Erie here, we're surrounded on all sides by single detached dwellings. So internal to the site, if you're about in the middle there, near where the accessory structure is, this is looking north towards Thunder Bay Road. This is a bit of existing vegetation here, and then the existing driveway that goes into the property and leads to the house. This view is if you're standing out towards the lake. This is up on the tableland, so looking towards that existing dwelling there. To this side, out of view, are the existing residential dwellings along Lake Crest. But this is the tableland that would be forming part of the new municipal park. And then this view that we got from some drone photography here, you can see a little bit more of the shoreline and kind of how this land looks from above. So just to give you a better sense of scale. So in addition to this, I'm just going to play a little bit of it. We had a brief drone video that was put together by our clients. So I'm just going to cue this up now. If you can't hear the audio very well, it's just a little bit of instrumental. There's no narration or anything like that. So I'll just I'll let this run a little bit. Back to our slideshow here. So I'll make this presentation available to the town after, and certainly feel free to click on and enjoy those videos later on. But I just want to give you a sense on the ground of kind of how it looks as you're walking around or flying around in the area, what it looks like. So in terms of the planning context, because we have 2 Planning Act applications, these lands are within the urban area in the town of Fort Erie. And they're also within the area that's been designated by the province as the built-up area. So these are the areas that provincial, regional, and local planning policies direct us to have growth go into. And this is because they represent ready opportunities for increased density and development. They typically have municipal services fully available, proximity to roads, transit, and things like that, and they're surrounded by other residential development. So it fits in well. It is the area that's prescribed by the planning framework in Ontario for where development's supposed to go. As Aaron alluded to, the property is also designated as low density residential in the town of Fort Erie official plan. It's further designated low density also in the Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan area. So there's a specific set of policies in this area of the municipality that help govern development. Under that low density designation, it permits a variety of lower density residential uses, and those are further permitted through the existing zoning as well as the R2A zoning that we're proposing, single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplexes. But as I indicated, these will be strictly single detached dwellings in keeping with the general character of the area. There's also, in effect, the environmental conservation overlay, which Aaron spoke to, and then the hazard zoning that's in place out along the shoreline. Overall, though, the planning framework directs development to these types of lands with these types of designations. So from a planning perspective, it's considered an appropriate location for development. So this is a higher level overview of what the draft plan of subdivision looks to. So there's 2 parts to it. So the first part we have is this area here along Thunder Bay Road and Burley Road South. So this is a residential development area, and this is where there's the 41 single detached residential lots that are proposed. The balance of the property is comprised of different blocks. There's the block here, which corresponds with the existing water course. There's a block here for access to the public lands. There's another open space parkland block. This is generally in that flat tableland. And then there's a block down here, which is reflective of those hazard lands in that hazard zoning location. And those lands, as I indicated, are going to be transferred to the town through the registration of the plan. So I just want to zoom in and provide a little closer aspect because I know that bigger plan is tougher to read. So this is generally the draft plan subdivision that's before the municipality for consideration. The roadways are lining up. This is Gordon Avenue to the north, so we have a nice teed up intersection here for safety. And then the secondary access is here over on Burley Road South. So along Burley Road, these corner lots have a side yard flanking condition, so they'll be presenting an enhanced facade towards Burley Road South. These interior lots on the island here have a smaller frontage than the other ones. These lots all have a minimum of a 15 meter, about a 50-foot frontage per the lots. These ones are 13.68 meters. They provide a little bit more variety in terms of the size of the lots, but also helped us with the unique geometry of the site, making sure that we get a good design and different scales of housing. Scales of housing has been discussed quite a bit lately by the municipality. They're looking to ensure there's not overbuilding, not overdevelopment. So we feel this plan reflects some of those principles and provides an opportunity for a mix of development here. But these lots are about 44 feet wide, so they're still fairly large urban lots. These dwellings here will have access out onto Thunder Bay Road. Everyone else will be taking their access internally. Before I transition into the next portion of the plan, here is that block 45. So this would be a public access into the parkland out along the water. And then this is the environmental protection area, that existing watercourse channel with the necessary buffers that have been recommended through the environmental impact study. It's about a 60-meter channel up to here, and then it widens out a little bit just to reflect the conditions in the location of the watercourse. So this is the balance of the site. Those table lands are block 43. This is to be zoned as open space for park, and then this block 44 is retaining its hazard land zoning that it currently has, and will also be transferred to the town as the full connection to the waterfront. So as I mentioned, there's a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment that goes with the land division application. So it changes the zoning on the site from that entirely waterfront residential to the R2A zone for the residential portion. So this portion up here is all R2A. There's no site-specific exceptions to any of the provisions of that zone. It's the base zone that's been in. We've designed in accordance with that base level zoning there. The waterfront residential zoning is meant to govern lots that have immediate flankage onto Lake Erie. With the separation of the property here, these lots no longer have that immediate access to Lake Erie. So we felt a regular quote unquote residential zoning would be the most appropriate. The R2A is a bit more of a modern zone that the town has put together that helps govern single detached dwellings. We felt this the zoning provides for ample room for front yards, rear yards, driveway parking, and a modestly sized home. In terms of the rest of the lands, part 2 and part 2 shown here for the zoning schedule. These are lands that are going to be zoned as open space, which is generally the parkland zoning that the town of Fort Erie has. Part 3 is going to get an EPA or environmental protection area zone, which prohibits all development. And then, as I mentioned, the existing hazard zone is just going to remain because it already prohibits development and there's no opportunity to develop out along the water. So these are just some high-level conceptual drawings that our clients put forward to say this is what the houses could look like out here. Takes a lot of flavoring from what's gone on with Ridge Way by the lake. This is common, that kind of coastal cottagey look to the homes. This is what can be expected in this development, which we feel is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, both the old and the new development. So we have another one here just to give you a little sense of scale. The development will likely be predominantly bungalows. So this is just to kind of give you a sense of scale on that. With the application, just beyond filing an application, there's supporting studies that are required to be submitted to the town, and those are based on the requirements of town staff, the Regional Municipality of Niagara, the MPCA, who's the Conservation Authority, and any other agencies that have an interest in the development. So as part of our complete submission, we had to provide an environmental impact study, a functional servicing and stormwater management study, an archaeological assessment, and a planning justification report. So the environmental impact study is basically the environmental report that evaluates the site to see if there's any environmentally sensitive features, what can be developed, what can't be developed, and any necessary setbacks that should be provided. So one of the things that was noted is that existing watercourse on the property, which is going to remain untouched, is an ephemeral watercourse, which means that it's not a fully full watercourse all the time. It typically takes flows after significant rainfall or spring melt. So that watercourse is being protected from development for the long term with a minimum of an 11-meter buffer to each side of the center line of the watercourse. The sand area out along the lake was also identified as a potential Fowler's toad habitat. Fowler's toad are endangered species that occur along the Lake Erie coast. They tend to breed and live within the sandy areas. We didn't encounter any during our studies, but the environmental impact study recommended that the necessary prohibitive policies and zoning stay in place to prohibit any changes to that terrain so that species is not affected. And just kind of in closing, in addition to those environmental blocks, as well as the parkland blocks, open space blocks, there's no development at all that's proposed within any of the lands that are going to be transferred to the town of Fort Erie. So the functional servicing and stormwater management study are the next report. And what that is, it's a higher level study that indicates if the development can be supported by existing servicing in the area, and that has an appropriate stormwater management plan or outlet. In terms of servicing capacity, we have water and sanitary sewer available, and the property can be accommodated within the existing capacity of that system. With regard to stormwater management, unlike much larger subdivisions, we don't need a stormwater management pond on site. We have an available outlet, which albeit is a little bit further down Thunder Bay Road. We're going to be connecting to that existing storm sewer. There's going to have to be an extension of that storm sewer that the developer will be paying their share of for the reconstruction, and that will accommodate a portion of our development site, as well as the roadway that's out front along Thunder Bay. And then the balance of the lands, mostly the naturalized area, will continue to sheet drain either into the water course or down towards the lake as they have for years. In terms of archaeological assessment, our studies were conducted about 2 years ago. No archaeological resources were found on the property. The reports have been filed and cleared by the province, so it means we're good to go. There'll be warning clauses on title. So of course, if anything is found during excavation, immediately the ministry is going to be engaged and called in to make sure that those resources are evaluated and that they're protected if required. And then finally, the planning justification report is what I prepared as the registered professional planner on the file. Based on my review, the application is consistent and conforms with all the necessary provincial policies. It also conforms with the regional and town official plan policies. So in terms of the next steps for this development, as Aaron indicated, the statutory public meeting, which will be another more formal opportunity for you to engage with town council and provide your comments. There'll be a presentation that evening and then an open forum for you to deliver comments. It's been tentatively set for October 4th, which is just over a month from now. Upon completion of that, we're going to have a wholesome review of public and agency comments on our end. So the comments you're going to have for us tonight, anything we hear at the public meeting, and the public and agency comments, which are continuing to come into the town right now for our review to make sure that we deal with everything that may be an issue and adequately address any outlying concerns. Following that, council will be in position to consider the applications. Staff will be making a recommendation one way or the other on if it should be approved or not. If council does approve it, the next step will be for us to go into our detailed design and engineering, and that could be in late 2021 or early 2022. And if everything goes smoothly and there's no significant challenges or delays with the project, it's possible that we may move into a little bit of construction in late 2022. So those are the high points that I wanted to share with you tonight. So I'll pass it back over to the town. And as I said, I'll do whatever I can to answer any questions that you may have tonight.
Thanks, Craig. So before we open up the conversation to those of you that are logged into the Zoom meeting tonight, as I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to give a bit of a summary on what we've heard so far, as there have been comments provided to the town already. And in case those people aren't here tonight, their concerns are noted. Or their comments are noted. And if you do see comments or others share comments, there isn't a need to necessarily reiterate them, but please do come on and note that you share the same comment, or if you have something new to say, please do so. So I'm just going to share my screen again and go through this summary briefly. So the one thing I heard was about the mailboxes in the area. There's an existing community mailbox on Gordon, that's just north of Thunder Bay, that some of you may use. And there was a concern about more people using that mailbox, more traffic down Gordon, and especially in that area around the mailbox. Typically through a new development, Canada Post would install a new community mailbox on the subject site, on the subdivision lands, kind of internal to that site. On the public road that would serve that area, that would serve the new lots. Canada Post has circulated on these types of applications, and so they'll, in conjunction with the town, decide where that would go. So we wouldn't anticipate any new people being added to the Gordon mailbox. In terms of road reconstruction, sidewalks, this is part of our detailed review of plans and conditions that are then applied if a development is approved. What we would anticipate so far is that Thunder Bay Road would be reconstructed, and that would happen from Burley Road to Cook Street. This section is actually part of the town's development charges work. So when new development comes in, developers are required to pay what's called development charges when they build homes. That money goes into a pot of money which pays for infrastructure improvements. So the Thunder Bay Road project is actually a development charge infrastructure project. The owner of this site, the developer of this site, would undertake that work on behalf of the town. And this would also include installation of a storm sewer in that same stretch and upgrades to the water main. And there would be some costs sharing between the developer and the town if that were approved. Burley Road, there were some questions on whether Burley Road would be reconstructed. It would be, the intersection likely be reconstructed with Thunder Bay, but not Burley itself, south of Thunder Bay Road. There would probably be some, there'll be servicing tie-ins along Burley Road, which would have to be reinstated by the developer. Sidewalks is also part of our detailed review, and in the new internal road would have a sidewalk on one side of the street, and on Thunder Bay Road there would be a sidewalk on at least one side, possibly both. That would happen through the detailed review, but at least one side of the road would contain a sidewalk. We had some questions about the water course and protection of the water course. This is reviewed by the town, the region, and the Conservation Authority. At the moment, as Craig noted, an 11-meter buffer is proposed, so that's 36 feet on the north side of the water course. So before any lot line or before any development would occur, and everything in that buffer in terms of vegetation would remain. And there's actually a possibility of enhancing through further plantings in that buffer. The parkland and environmental block, we did have a few questions about that. So typically the town takes through a development application, at the very least along the beach, the environmental protection land. So that's the beach and usually a setback from that. The town also has the ability through a subdivision process to take parkland and then build a park. We have the ability to take 5% of the land. So through pre-consultation on this site, which is typical, the developer approaches the town and shares a preliminary plan. The feedback that was provided to the developer was that the town has an interest in acquiring more than 5% to have some parkland in this area. So in addition to the beach lands, that flat area that you saw in the drone video, at this point would be proposed to be dedicated to the town as part of a future park proposal. The two buildings on the property, you saw that there are two buildings there. They're proposed to remain. The town does not have any plans for those buildings. And if this development were approved, a future kind of park planning process would occur with participation from the public, and any use of those buildings, if any, would be determined at that point. And what I wanted to note was that this idea of the town acquiring more parkland was discussed with council through a memorandum of understanding that has been signed by the developer. And it essentially said, if approved, we would be interested in taking additional lands for park purposes. And that MOU, memorandum of understanding, also detailed some cost sharing of infrastructure works in Thunder Bay Road. And lastly, what I wanted to note about the park is that block that you saw for access to the park from the road could be a future parking lot that would serve anyone in this area that is wanting to access the park and the lake. And the last comment that I wanted to note was that there was a couple of comments that the proposed R2A zoning is not the same as the surrounding neighborhood, and that the lot sizes wouldn't be compatible. That's something town staff will consider in our review of the application, and certainly address that in the staff report to council. Okay, Mackenzie, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Aaron. So at this time, I would like to invite our attendees in the virtual waiting room to ask questions or provide comments. So you can indicate that you'd like to speak by raising your virtual hand. So for those joining by computer, laptop, or mobile device, you can do this by pressing the raise hand button. So to do this, click on the icon labeled participants at the bottom center of your computer or phone screen. And at the bottom of the window, click the button labeled Raise Hand. If you're joining by telephone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. And as mentioned, we will be giving each speaker 5 minutes to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to participate this evening. So I know we have one individual with their hand up, so I'll see. We'll start with Carrie Mitchell, and we'll see if anybody else raises their hand. So Carrie, I'll be bringing you in now. Hi, Carrie. Sorry, you're still muted. You should get a prompt. There we go.
Hi there, my name is Carrie Mitchell, and my sister and I are the owners of 3261 Thunder Bay Road, which is the property immediately to the east of the proposed development. First, I would like to say it is great to be back in Canada. So I say that as an American who has not been here for a couple of seasons. But for the purposes of this call, I'm really here to speak as what I consider to be the most fully affected neighbor. And I say that with relationship to 3 key factors: proximity and the size of the development, impact to the so-called water course from added drainage, and impact to the private, quiet environmental setting through the creation of a park. My interest here today is not to comment on the town's plan and strategic direction, but rather to express sort of the justness and the need for adequate remedy for what realtors have already said is a negative impact to the privacy interests, quiet enjoyment, and value of my property. A message to the town is going to follow this open house, but I'd like to briefly articulate my concerns in 3 broad areas. So proximity to development. First of all, the original development wasn't slated to be 41 pieces of property. So it's considerably larger. I did not realize, and I don't think that it was initially conceived of as having all of these lot 6, in fact, along what really is our driveway. To me, this is sort of out of keeping with the traditional lifestyle and character of the lakefront lots. Which, if you travel up and down the Thunder Bay Road, I think typically have, perhaps one separate structure on them. So no lots along our driveway would certainly be what we would be seeking. At a minimum, a dramatically reduced number of lots along the driveway, along with a very natural, dense, deep, tall, mature, sort of view blocking buffering. Obviously, the property next door was heavily wooded prior to the removal of all the trees a couple of years ago. And some of the removal of the trees has caused other trees to come down because roots have been cut and they were not able to be sustained. And those were not ones that were dead ash. Second, impact to the so-called water course. I've lived here all of my life, summer resident. This was essentially a dry ditch. Up until the Ridgeway on the Lake development, you would get the occasional, sort of through of water through that ditch. But since the Ridgeway on the Lake development, we have seen just torrential rushes of water through that ditch, creating sinkholes and greatly contributing to very significant erosion on my neighbor's bank. And that bank happens to support a great maple tree that my grandfather planted 100 years ago, and certainly interested in seeing no further damage brought to neighboring lands impacted through that water course. The environmental report says that the cumulative effects of this so-called water course are out of the scope of this report, and I would have to ask why. I think the cumulative effects should be included in this report. Property damage, as I've said, has already occurred and continues to occur from it. So consideration and infrastructure should be given to neighboring properties impacted by the increasing flows. 3, public parks. Let me start by saying I understand this. The desirability and the benefit to Ridgeway residents is clear, and So I totally get the idea of, wanting more parks for the area, but I do have a couple of concerns. First, I note that this meeting has identified the house that is on the property as remaining. I have understood that that is not the case from a direct source. So that's one point. Second is number of people. What will this park, capacity be? Obviously, there's a great loss of privacy that will be resulting from that to my property and this end of the bay. I think if you've got people in an area immediately adjacent to you, you can also imagine that quiet enjoyment sort of is on the downside. So there's also, I think, a need for a very clearly established lakefront property boundary. And in this case, what I would really be seeking is something that's very natural in effect, something that blends with this very rocky, bouldery kind of waterfront area, not sort of the chain link fences that you see in other places. But a boundary is definitely necessary because we certainly see just on this bay alone how overflow beyond public beaches has definitely impacted neighboring properties. I would also, of course, the parking issue is another question and concern. How many, what are the hours of park, all those different details. Another concern, though, that I would just raise is for the public itself. As I said, I've lived here my entire life, and this is not a sand beach. This is slate. And the number of times that I have called out to young children, older people that are walking along that very slippery slate to be careful is, I can't count them. I've seen some tremendous falls over the years. And so it is a hazard area at some level. It's a beautiful hazard area. It's a hazard area worthy of being viewed, but it is a hazard area in a more conventional hazard definition sense. So here, again, looking for sort of substantial natural buffering to clearly demarcate the public from the private areas. So these are sort of three broad stroke areas of concern and interest. As I said, I'll be following this up with a letter, I guess, to Aaron or to town council. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to allow me to present my concerns here. And again, so it's great to be back in Canada.
Thank you very much.
Craig, did you want to address any of what Carrie's noted? If not, Carrie, I'll look forward to your letter. Certainly that'll be shared with the agent as well, with the developer, and this goes for everyone that will speak, and shared with council as well. And we will consider everything in your letter as part of considering the application and making a recommendation to council with any conditions of approval if approval is granted.
Thank you.
Yeah, just in turn, I have all the notes down, so thank you very much for the comments. I think that the one that I can probably just most quickly answer, well, first and foremost, thanks for those comments. I know our clients are listening in right now, so we'll have a discussion about your concerns about the buffer with the driveway. In terms of the drainage, though, and the water course, Thunder Bay Road is part of the town's master plan for stormwater drainage. So the bulk of the developed area, which would become impervious now, is actually going to be focused through a storm sewer system in the development. And it's going to be sent out to Thunder Bay Road into the storm sewer. So the only flows that are going to be coming into that water course from this site will be likely the backyards of those units that are on the south side of that new street over surface drainage into the water course. We won't be actually outletting all of our stormwater into that. It'll be going into the sewer and then down the road to, I think, I forget the name of the road where the outlet is.
Goes down to Bernard where the outlet is.
Yeah.
I am aware that is what is said, and I understand, and I believe that's what will happen. But let me say, when we really started to object to what was happening after the Ridgeway on the Lake development, I understand there are 6 houses only, that their backyards only feed into that same water course, and I cannot tell you how much damage it has done. So the idea that it's only just a few and it's only backyard runoff is not something that is completely reassuring to me, to say the least. So
we will definitely look at that, Carrie.
thank you.
And I guess the only other thing I'll note, Carrie, was that through council's kind of previous consideration of acquiring parklands here, there's some language in this memorandum of understanding, which you may or may not have. It is available on the website for public viewing, that some included requirements for buffering along your property line adjacent to the park.
Yeah, I did see that. You know, I guess, you know, mature trees are not the same thing as trees that are planted that, you know, are a couple of years old. So this is kind of the point that I'm talking about when I say dense, deep, mature. I mean, these are areas that have been, you know, it is the privacy, it's the natural environment that one pays all the taxes for, quite honestly, and that draws people to this area in the beginning. So, you know, and quite honestly too, what you were seeing is with all the trees that were cut down, the amount of water that would be absorbed by the trees in sort of an before the, you know, a couple of years ago cut down, obviously no longer is occurring. So how is that going to affect additional drainage and flow to the water course? It's a major concern for us. It has been a major concern for a number of years, right before this development. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Carrie.
I get
No, not at all. You're
passionate about it.
no, not a problem. Looking forward to going through your comments in detail when you send them in.
Thank you very much, Carrie. So we will now be moving on to our next attendee. So it looks like we have two individuals with their hands raised. So I'll bring in Maxine first. Hi, Maxine, can you hear us? Maxine, it looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear or see you at this time. Let's see. Maybe you don't have access to video as well. Aaron, the call-in information's on the website, right? If someone wanted to call in. So Maxine, maybe I will move you back to the attendee waiting room if you can have a chance to take a look at your audio, because perhaps the input isn't set up right. But if you go on the town's website, under development approvals and public notices, you'll be able to see the meeting details there. There's some call-in options. And then we'll be able to have some audio through a phone. So please raise your hand again if your audio options, if you have that sorted out, or if you come in as a call-in user, we can bring you in.
I will post the link to the webpage, which includes the phone number to call in and your participant ID, which you'll type in. I'll post that into the chat here that you'll have access to, Maxine. If you're asked for a password, you simply hit pound to get into the meeting over the phone, and that way we can hear you.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so in the meantime, we'll bring in our next attendee. There we
I'm not
go.
particularly ready for visuals, but here we are.
No
My
problem.
name's Erin Mitchell, and I'm Carrie's sister, co-owner of the house next door. And I thoroughly agree with all of Carrie's comments. And I do have some additional questions. Throughout this proposal, there's a comment or a phrase called low density residential. You all have said that this is covering 14 acres already of land, and I'm thinking about half of it is maybe supposedly going to be additional buildings. So that's 7 acres of land with 41 houses on it. At this moment, there isn't even 25 houses surrounding the whole property. And I think I don't know, heard people say over the last few years that, maybe it'd be nice to even have 3 more houses on the waterfront in between my house and the point. And that still wouldn't really even be 25. I mean, still low density. I don't get how that works. What is your definition of low density? We are not an Ridgeway, Thunder Bay area. It's not a condo area. It's strictly houses, and not strictly houses, but predominantly the major majority. So and with 41 houses, I suspect that at least 100 people would reside there. How many dogs would that be? How many trees would be there? There were at least 200 trees there before, without any question. And this brings me to a second question of the area that had the trees before, which is 99% of the area where the houses would be, is stated as environmental conservation overlay. Well, the trees were stripped away, and how can that environmental conservation overlay just disappear? Why wasn't it forced to put some trees back up? As Carrie had said, when the trees all went away, there was a lot more water coming through the water zone 43, the water path. I've forgotten how you phrase it. Sorry. So I just think, well, I don't see how this could be low density. I just don't. And I'm very concerned about the waterway also. We used to call it, growing up, as a dry creek, and it always was. And it was a dry creek until probably 10 years ago, I'm guessing. So, but now it's not. And it's not just, when there's heavy rains. The heavy rains bring a ton of pollution into the water, a ton. The whole bay can look clay after very heavy rain. At least it did when the golf course, Niagara, close to the lake, I've forgotten what it's called, I'm sorry, was built. So that is a huge concern. And as far as the mitigation efforts that you all have said at this moment of, a buffer, well, we already have an issue with, there's already been problems with it. So a buffer doesn't necessarily help any of the problems. It may additional buffer may prevent more problems, but it doesn't necessarily help what's already happened. And I also noted that your numbers as far as water go back to 1971 to 2005. And that was a time that, you know, had many storms, but we all know that global warming has changed things and there's a lot more storms now. So the calculations of what those numbers might be based on 1971 to 2005, I don't think those numbers really jive. At least that would be my thought. And also Carrie mentioned about the slate and the lake. Every family member has fallen at some point over time there. Every close friend, even though they say they've got water shoes on, just almost everyone has fallen. So you know, I don't know what that means, but it's not the easiest place to swim. It may be shallow water, which is phenomenal, but you have to get out quite a ways to get beyond the slate sometimes. So I guess that's about it. Major concern though is the water course. Oh, and another comment, I'm sorry, Bernard Beach. If everything's being funneled to Bernard Beach has been a mess ever since I don't know who it was, but I think it was 2 different companies that worked on it probably 8 to 10 years ago. Prior to that, the beach was wonderful, but it hasn't been the same since. And I do know I've seen the boardwalk and it, you know, that's an addition. But as far as a usable beach with more storm water coming through, I don't know. I question that. So thank you for listening and thank you.
Thank you. And if you do have, at the end of the meeting, I'll put up my email address as well. And if you did want to write in any of your comments, feel free to as well.
Okay, thank you.
Very much. And Mackenzie, I see we have just kind of a question in the chat from Joe. Joe's question is, if the zoning amendment were not allowed, how many lots would be allowed in the development? Joe, that's something we'll note down. And even if you wanted to email me, I could provide that answer. If not, we'll certainly address that in our report, in our information report going to council in October when the next public meeting is held. So thank you for the comment.
Great. So Maxine, we're going to bring you back in again. Hopefully we can get your audio working. Hi, Maxine. We have you unmuted now. Did you want to try and speak to see if we can hear you?
So Maxine, it looks like there may be a problem on your end on Zoom, but of course, we don't want to miss your comments and we won't. So perhaps following the meeting, you could send me an email, you can give me a call, and we can connect, make sure your comments have been documented. And even if you're hoping to speak at the public meeting at council in October, we can do a test run with you ahead of time to see if we can resolve your Zoom issues. And of course, alternatively, as Mackenzie noted earlier, you can try calling in as well. But it doesn't look like we're going to be able to have you on audio tonight, unfortunately, Maxine.
All right, thank you, Maxine.
And just from our last participant, another question just came up on the chat. Just one of your points, is there an answer about low density residential? What is the definition? So the official plan of the town in this area of Thunder Bay that's designated low density, it allows, it's based on units per hectare. So it's an area calculation. So it's 25 units per hectare. So I just did some very quick math while you were speaking. And it looks like this development is at about 12 units per hectare. And again, the official plan allows 25. And what low density also means is the type of uses. So typically low density uses would be single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and duplexes would fall under the low density definition. Townhouses would be into medium density and apartments and so on.
Thanks, Aaron. So we have our call-in user has their hand raised, so I will bring them in. Hi, can you hear us?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name's John. My wife Christine. We live on Lake Crest Avenue, Court. Sorry, and the environmentally protected zone where the creek is running behind our properties on the north side of our properties. What I'd like to see is a fence put up on the proposed lots that would back onto Lake Crest Court lots. The reason for the fence would be to stop the new development from more owners from encroaching onto that grassy area there. That would, the 11-meter protected zone. That's about all I have to say about that. If that was possible to put up some sort of fencing. And that's it.
Thank you. And yeah, that's something the town would also consider, is that will be town property, sometimes adjacent to a park or, piece of land where development directly abuts. We might see like black chain link fence or something like that abutting that. Craig, did you want to note there?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, John. So because this watercourse is regulated by the MPCA, standard conditions of approval that we get is that whenever there's development backing on to a sensitive feature, at minimum, we need to provide a 1.5 meter tall chain link fence, black chain link. So that's the typical standard. Sometimes you can go to woodboard. Usually they leave it open though, so you can kind of see into the area just to make sure that there's nothing going on, no illegal dumping or anything like that. But we can say with certainty that the backside of the development, as it backs on that channel, will be fenced.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Great. So I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time. Maybe Aaron, I'll just give one more chance.
Yeah, and I see Maxine is wondering which phone number to call into. So why don't I post that phone number?
Yeah, great.
Right in there. Maxine, I'll do that for you now. There's a toll-free number.
And in the meantime, if there's anyone else who would like to come in and provide their comments or ask any questions, feel free to raise your virtual hand. And I can give those instructions one more time. So for those joining by computer, laptop, or mobile device, you can do this by pressing the raise hand button. So to do this, click on the icon labeled participants at the bottom center of your computer or phone screen. And at the bottom of the window, click the button labeled raise hand. If you are joining by telephone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. And as I mentioned, we are providing 5 minutes per speaker this evening. So let's give a moment for Maxine. I do see that we have, oh, there's our calling user now.
Maxine, we can see that you've called in. Mackenzie will just let you in momentarily. Maxine, you should be able to hear us now through your phone, and you should be able to speak.
You should be
Can
able.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hi, sorry about all the problem with the computer.
Maxine, before you continue, do you mind turning the audio off on your computer? Just turning the volume down on your computer. We can hear feedback.
Is that better?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Okay. I live directly across from the subject property, and we bought here in 2016 to retire, and came home from Florida one spring to find all the trees cut down. And we actually have the same type of concern as the Mitchells, with the trees being gone and our privacy being totally lost. We'll have all these driveways emptying onto Thunder Bay Road. Many of them will be, the lights will be going right into our front bedrooms. And we're wondering what type of buffering can be given to us. For that, we're wondering, is it a retirement community, or is it with children? We came again for the quiet enjoyment, and which we did get for many years when that was a single family dwelling cottage. But it's everything has changed now, and we're not sure if we're going to have to move. I'm just wondering what you can let me know with respect to a buffer, perhaps for our home, a green buffer.
And so, Maxine, you're concerned with vehicle headlights shining into
vehicle headlights, people backing out of their driveways and backing out, like the vehicle impact, and homes across the street. We've just lost acres. What is it? 11 acres worth of trees. Well, not entirely, but as Lauren and her sister said, we've lost roughly 200 trees. That's what we couldn't even see the lake before. Now we have a clear view of the lake, which will soon, which is very nice. However, that's soon going to be gone because of homes. So it's definitely not what we bought into when we moved down here. And we did, we drove all along the lake front and saw only cottage type like homes. So we didn't feel that that we would be having any type of community built right across from a retirement home in the near future.
Okay, thanks for your comments, Maxine. I don't think we have anything really to address what you've said tonight, but we've noted them. If you do want to send any other detailed comments, you can. And the town essentially speak to your comments in our report, and the developer and their agent will have an opportunity to address any of your concerns.
With respect to like a buffering product somehow on our home. For with trees or something. Right now, when we're going to open directly onto people's homes that weren't there before, our privacy is totally negated by people in their cars and in their homes looking across the street right directly into our bedroom windows, 2-bedroom windows that they'll be looking right into. So I'm just wondering, like, would the developer give us a buffer? I guess, Craig, maybe I should develop this, send this to.
Yeah, no, and that's, your comments are noted. And so we'll speak to that, and the developer will have an opportunity to answer that.
Okay.
Necessarily put them on the spot to answer that tonight. But certainly the town will be at least looking for a response from them on that.
Okay. Is there thoughts, is it a retirement community across, or is it going to be for families?
Hi, Maxine. It's Craig from Upper Canada. We don't typically zone for groups of people. What I can say is it's just a regular subdivision. Anyone can buy a home there. It's not a specially constructed type of condominium or private road development that's got a target audience like a retirement community or a long-term care home or something like that. These will just be typical lots like you see throughout the community. Anyone could buy them. So it could be older folks that are choosing to either age in place or move down to Niagara, or it could be young families getting started out. There's no restriction on who can live in these types of houses.
Thank you.
And Craig, we did just have a question in the chat, just as a follow-up to Maxine's question there. Does your client have an idea of how many bedrooms in each home?
Not at this time. We're working to set up the land division and get the necessary approvals to move forward with development. Housing design would come after that, may be done by a variety of different housing builders. So not sure right now.
I'm sorry, like just one last question. So is Blythewood the builder for this subdivision, or could there be other builders?
So Blythewood is part of the development team that's working on this. I don't know the necessary details of their arrangement and what they'll be doing, but certainly we need to have all the necessary land use approvals in place before we can contemplate what's going to be built and what it's going to look like. But Blythewood, very reputable firm, done a lot of work in Fort Erie, and they're part of the project team. So I can say with confidence they'll certainly be part of this project. I'm just not sure if they'll represent the entire build or not. We're very early stages here, but we are taking some direction from them, and they're helping us to prepare our materials for the approval.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maxine. So Mackenzie, I see that Lauren's hand is up again. I don't see any others. So if there were any that wanted an opportunity to speak, I think they've had it. So if you want to bring Lauren back in, if she might have some additional comments, we can do that.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi. Question in regards to traffic on both Burley and Thunder Bay Road. Are there ideas about lights? Are there ideas of, what is a traffic triangle? And someone also mentioned the widening of Thunder Bay Road up to Cook, or how are they going to change the streetscape of Thunder Bay Road? And how are they going to change the streetscape of Burley? And will there be a light at the intersection?
I can speak to that a little bit. So the intersection isn't planned to be signalized in terms of traffic lights. So far in what we've seen in our review, it would continue to be at this point a two-way stop. Detailed view of that kind of thing would happen through detailed engineering.
Not a two-way stop, not a four-way stop.
The current configuration of stop signs at Burley through traffic going through Thunder Bay Road. We would certainly look at whether or not, traffic control is needed there, whether that's a four-way stop or lights, and that's looked at through detailed engineering review. In terms of the upgrades to Thunder Bay Road, those upgrades, the upgrades that will occur were planned. Those were already planned by the town, and they were in the town's development charge study.
And what are they?
Yeah, so it would be an urbanization of that road. So that means curbs on both sides. There would be a storm sewer in the road, which would likely mean eliminating the ditches. Right now, it's kind of a rural cross section. So you have ditches and then just asphalt, and everything drains into the ditching system. An urban section looks like curbs. The water is contained within the road. The ditches on the sides are removed, and water goes into a pipe under the road. That stuff, an urbanization like that would also include sidewalks, as I mentioned earlier. And that is, in the town's plans, regardless of this development.
And just one sidewalk on one side of the street.
It could be two. We haven't gotten into that level of review at this point. And again, that's kind of whether or not this development were occurring, there would be upgrades to Thunder Bay Road at some point. If you think further west down Thunder Bay Road, there's already been some urbanization of the road that's happened, kind of west of Prospect. Mm-hmm. There's actually sidewalks on that stretch on both sides. So we would have to look at that, and we would look to comments from the public through this process as well, whether or not sidewalks would go on both sides of this road. It is an arterial road through the town that we do want to encourage walking and being a pedestrian friendly road. So that construction kind of in the interim, in the short term, would go to Cook. But the urbanization of Thunder Bay Road is even planned in the town's books even further than that, I think, to Bernard in the future. And again, that's a plan regardless of whether this development is occurring.
Erin, if I could add to that, just I know her questions about the triangles in the widening. So whenever you're working with a intersection in development, there's a typical standard for a daylighting triangle or a visibility triangle. And what that allows is if you're stopped in your car, you have a clear view shed to see coming traffic. So that area is either dedicated to the municipality or otherwise it's to be kept clear. So we've provided all those necessary triangles at the corner of where the new street's going to go through. And also we've taken that off at the corner of Thunder Bay Road and Burley Road. The road widening, the municipality is entitled to ask for as part of a planning application that involves land division. So like a subdivision, a condo, or a consent, they can take it. And their official plan sets out the width of that road. So the town's going to acquire this sliver of land that they need to get that ultimate width of Thunder Bay Road that they need to do their construction for free. Otherwise, if you need additional lands, the municipality has to either expropriate or pay for land. So it's a typical thing that's done when you register a subdivision. You provide the necessary widening along any of the public roads and provide the necessary visibility triangles for a safe operation of an intersection. So when we register a subdivision, it gets drawn up on a reference plan, it gets transferred. So this will get transferred with those parkland blocks at the same time.
And just to add on to that, to be clear, that road widening is property. It's a property widening that the town would apply. And any improvements to the actual road itself, that will happen later through detailed design of how wide is the asphalt, where the curbs, how it'd still be a 2-lane road. We're not talking about widening this to a 4-lane road or 3-lane road or anything like that.
Yeah, just the land, not immediate construction after that. It's just to give them the necessary land area that they need.
Okay. So back to the environmental conservation overlay phrasing. It says throughout the paperwork that they want to remove that phraseology, of course, which would be mandatory to be able to build those buildings. Could there be some requirement to put back a certain percentage of trees that would be more than at least 20%?
So you're talking about, after the development occurs, some other more plantings, replanting to occur somewhere on the site.
Well, I mean, that whole area where the houses would be.
Yeah.
Was all trees except for a driveway and maybe 3 feet on either side. And now it's not. And I know it will be clear cut again. Initially, the property was an absolutely unbelievable garden of 11 acres. I mean, it was just an unbelievable garden way back when. And with then woods in the back. And for it to just not have any growth whatsoever is just criminal to what it was initially. There used to be, I think, three full-time people working on the garden all day long. It was an unbelievable park. Well, it wasn't a park, it was private property, but unbelievable property.
Yeah, and I'll speak to this a bit. As you noted, in the town's documents, the site has a designation and a zone overlay of environmental conservation, and that was there when the woodlot it's a certain size woodlot and it's a certain density and canopy of tree cover. There was, my understanding a number of years ago, quite a bit of ash dieback from the emerald ash borer, and the property, those ash trees were removed, as well as other dead and hazardous trees, is my understanding through reviewing kind of the background on the file. And so that environmental conservation overlay is still there. And what the town would do now is review this development proposal, kind of current context out there. It's no longer a fully treed woodlot.
Of course.
Right. There are a number of trees still there.
It could be.
There are a number of trees still there. And I hear your point about replanting and revegetation. That's something we can take back and the developer can consider. Craig, did you want to add anything on that in terms of vegetation or removals?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a situation of it kind of is where it is. Just coming into the file over the past year, I'm the same mindset of Aaron here is there's a backstory behind it, and the permissions were granted and the removals were conducted. That being said, I can share with you that we've heard from some of the other review agencies that are looking for an enhancement of the EPA block, which is along the creek to put some native plantings in there, take out the invasive species, and try to create a little bit more of a robust environment along that water course. What we will be providing, and of course, it's not comparable to natural state forest and vegetation and woodlots and things like that. But there are significant opportunities for street tree planting in here to get good native species back in here along Burley Road, Thunder Bay Road, and along our internal street. So there's opportunities for us to increase native vegetation through the build out. And we'll be looking for more direction from the regulatory bodies and other review agencies who tell us where we can and cannot do planting and move things. But we're going to do our best to provide some trees back into this where it's appropriate. And right now that's along that boulevard to give it the feel of the area around it, and likely some enhancements to those existing vegetated areas.
And I think, as I noted earlier, Lauren, that there was, we would certainly look at vegetation and a buffer along your west property line as well, kind of on the town property.
And my last question, are there any ideas of green systems being instituted in these buildings? Water systems, rain barrels, solar roofs, whatever the case may be. What green systems have been?
So that's something that's not typically, regulated by the zoning bylaw, I'll say, by the town's zoning bylaw. We're not telling people what systems to use in their houses. I don't know if the builders have some kind of idea in that respect, but they certainly would put forward a stormwater management plan. In this case, I believe it's, new pipes in the road, storage in the pipes out to a storm system. Craig, did you have any comments on that, on, green energy systems and building?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, we're at the preliminary stage here. We haven't really contemplated any detailed building design. That'll come later, once the developer gears up to go to construction and start selling the units. I mean, certainly the houses that are built now are going to be more energy efficient than likely all the older stock that's around it, just because of the updates in the building code and energy efficient requirements in the province of Ontario. So there's those base level guarantees, but at this time we haven't had any detailed conversations about sustainable or green energy systems for the homes.
Thanks, Craig. So we do have a couple of other attendees in the waiting room with their hands up, but thanks very much, Lauren. We really appreciate your comments and your time this evening.
I appreciate the time. Thank you. And yours too.
So I will bring in Kathy next. And just a reminder, we'll try to keep to the 5 minutes. Hi, Kathy.
Hello. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. I just wanted to follow up with Aaron on an email earlier that we had this morning. Because I don't live close to your development that you're proposing, but I do live across from the Shirley Road pumping station. And my concern is that will the development, the sewer system, will it be coming to Shirley Road, which I understand, if I read the email correct, it will be, and the stormwater management also?
So I can clarify that, Kathy. The stormwater, there's an existing storm sewer that's in Thunder Bay Road further east of this site. And the stormwater from this property would actually connect into that storm sewer. So it wouldn't go north into that Shirley Road next to the Shirley station, the stormwater. But the pumping station, all development really in this area does go to that pumping station, I believe. I can, through our review, we'll receive comments from the Niagara region who own the pumping station and through our own engineering department. And we would have to ensure that there's capacity in that pumping station to allow, development to go there. So that certainly, I can definitely follow up with you on that in a follow-up email once I have that engineering review.
Okay.
Craig and I are both not engineers, but we can answer your question for sure.
Okay.
Follow up.
And the other one that I was just listening to the other panels that were on there, when the lady was commenting about the creek that's running between there, that it was dry at one time and now it's not anymore. Is it not dry because of storm surge, or is it not dry because of storm water, like rain and stuff like that?
Hi, Kathy. I'll attempt to answer this. As Aaron said, I'm not an engineer, but my understanding is that so that creek conveys flows that are coming from the west. And that creek does take some storm flows from some newer development that's occurred over the past 10 years. So it's adding in. So the water flow direction is, from my understanding, from further in the west. When you have a storm event or significant melt, it's going into there, and then it's conveyed through its existing run, then out into the lake. There's no storm surge that pushes the water uphill in the opposite way. So the direction of conveyance is downward south to the lake, and that continues to be the way it will function. But as I noted earlier to one of the participants, most of the stormwater flows that are going to be created by this development are going to be directed through the storm sewer system out to Thunder Bay Road into the big storm sewer.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So I do see both of the Mitchells with their hands raised again. Carrie and Lauren, Lauren's put her hand down, but I believe she may have, to Kathy's question, she's saying both, it's both rainwater and storm surge. Carrie does have her hand back up. Mackenzie, maybe we can let Carrie back in, and then I think we will end on that note. And to anyone else, Carrie, Lauren, anyone else that's participated tonight, we can certainly continue the conversation if you have other specific questions offline or by email. So Mackenzie, why don't we bring Carrie back in? And I think that will probably be our last user.
Okay, great.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I'll be very quick. So it was just a follow-up question to the environmental conservation overlay. Was there a requirement at the time that any number of trees be replanted to replace trees that came out? Because certainly it was not just dead trees that came out. Was there any requirement?
No, there wasn't. And I can share, because I've done some, my background on this to find the council minutes from a couple of years ago. I can share, certainly in my report to council, I'll be sharing the history of the dead ash removal and then the other hazard trees that were removed. And council did consider it. The request to remove the trees was brought to council. But from my knowledge, from what I saw, there wasn't a replanting requirement, no.
Okay, just as a final comment, and as someone who, again, obviously hasn't been here for a little while, it's striking to see Ridgeway after, what's been essentially 2 seasons now. And part of what's striking, obviously, is the number of additional builds. But, alongside the additional builds is the reduction in greenery, in tree growth, in the feel of the town. It takes on quite a different feel. And while there are, great aspects to everything, there's always a loss to something. And the importance of trees and nature is certainly part of what is important about the entire environment that, obviously sort of has as its center point, the lake. So I just leave that as a final comment. And I thank you for all of your time. I know you went a little bit longer than you were probably planning to. So thank you.
No problem. We're happy to have the participation. Thank you. So I just wanted to end just by placing my email up on the screen if anyone did want to contact me with any direct comments. If you didn't speak tonight, or even if you did want to send any follow-up comments. And as was noted, kind of the next steps from here, we would compile the comments we've received, give them consideration, provide them to the developer for their consideration, and anything we've received up to this point will be included in our information report to council. So there'll be a section in our report that details the public comments we've received with staff comments on each. That follow-up report will be going to council in October. The moment we're looking at October 4th for the public meeting. And it will be similar to this, I think, on Zoom. And following that additional public meeting, there would then be a consideration by council, basically council's opportunity to actually decide on the application, whether that's approval with conditions or not. If you have any other questions otherwise about the process, feel free to contact me as well. So with that, I think we'll conclude the evening. Thanks, Mackenzie, for the help. Thank you, Craig, and thanks everyone who joined us and is watching on YouTube tonight.